All right. Well, it is 5:30. We'll bring the meeting to order. We can start by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let's go over our meeting guidelines, safety protocol. Purpose of this meeting is for the board to conduct board business. And the meeting is open to the public and is recorded. And you can listen to all past board meetings by visiting board docs through the district website. This meeting is being presented via Zoom. It's not appropriate for audience members to interrupt board business or ask questions during the meeting, and agenda items will be addressed as listed on the agenda. In case of emergency, please exit using the exit closest to you. Director Jeffries, would you care to share our vision and mission statement?
Sure. Vision: our community inspires and prepares each student to thrive. Our mission: in connection with our community, the Sequim School District empowers staff to inspire hope and provide flexible, innovative learning opportunities in a safe and respectful environment so each student thrives.
Thank you. And Director Roca, would you share our land acknowledgement?
Sure. We acknowledge the land we stand on. The Sequim School District administrative and school buildings sit on the ancestral land of the S'Klallam people. While the S'Klallam traditionally come from one nation, history has led to the formation of three sovereign S'Klallam tribal governments: Lower Elwha S'Klallam tribe, Jamestown S'Klallam tribe, Fort Gamble S'Klallam tribe. The district's primary partnership is with the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe. Today, the tribe and the district share a partnership that includes official consultation on programs and funding changes that may directly affect American Indian and Alaska Native students, as well as holistic service planning for students to remain successful in their educational journeys.
Great, thank you. And do want to recognize, we've had a few board meetings over the summer, but one thing now, we have our student board members back with us, which we are very happy to have, including our newest student board members. So do want to welcome you and thank you for being here, and congratulations on your again on your appointment to the board.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, let's go on. We do have our approval of minutes, approval of consent agenda, and approval of agenda. Not necessarily in that order, but is there any objection to the approval of our minutes from August 19th? The approval of our agenda as proposed, and approval of our consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll consider those approved. And that's going to bring us to the public comment portion of the meeting. And if you are here attending the meeting via Zoom, you can indicate your desire to make public comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom, which should be located at the bottom of your screen. And if you would like to make public comment, I would ask you to do that now, and we'll go ahead and mark you down, put you in the queue. All right, and I do want to just briefly mention our guidelines for public comment. And we have set aside the first 30 minutes for public comment. And each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. And a group of individuals may combine their time for up to a 10-minute maximum. Do want to remind folks, public comment is not a period of back and forth dialogue between the board and public. And so the board doesn't respond to statements, questions, or challenges made during the public comment period. But know that the board's silence is neutral. It is neither a signal of agreement or disagreement with the remarks. And although the board will not engage in dialogue, the board chair might ask the speaker to clarify questions. It is also possible the school district staff will contact a speaker at a later time to follow up on an issue raised during public comment. Finally, remember that Your words have impact, and you, not the school district, are responsible for your words. And we caution all speakers that it is possible that statements could violate the rights of others under various laws, including laws protecting privacy and laws prohibiting defamation. And if you are unsure the legal effect of your remarks, you should seek independent legal advice. In any case, we of course ask you to help us model for our students what respectful and inclusive community looks and sounds like. And in the interest of time and respect to others, I do want to remind folks it's not appropriate for complaints or charges about employees to be mentioned during public comment. These issues are to be addressed to the superintendent in writing. And with that, you do believe we have Anne sign up for public comment? Welcome. Yeah, yeah, right there.
All right. All right. So hello, Board of Directors. I know most of you, except I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you two. So hi, my name is Ann Henninger and I live at Oh, you're going to make me have to multitask?
Yeah, this is just, in case you're letting it linger, it'll pick up.
Pretty sure my voice will carry.
Will, but the people online.
Is that
good? Yep.
all right? I'm taking your word for it.
Thank you.
So again, my name is Ann Henninger and I'm at 425 North Sunnyside Avenue. So hop, skip, and a jump away. And I've lived in the Sequim School District since 1996, and I've been a homeschooling parent since 1991. And I want to first thank all of you for your public service. It is deeply appreciated, and I have significant respect for it. I am so pleased and grateful to report that over the last 2 decades, our family has enjoyed a wonderful relationship with the Sequim School District, particularly through our offspring playing sports for SHS, advising appointments for Running Start, the boys and girls soccer, and the booster clubs, my serving as a volunteer coach, and soon a football game ticket scanner. I am an administrator for a Facebook group called Homeschooling on the Olympic Peninsula. We are 1,660 members strong and serve as a resource for those new to or experienced in homeschooling. I also serve on the advocacy team for the Washington Homeschool Organization. And if you didn't already know this, every year on September 15th, every homeschool family is mandated by law to file a declaration of intent to provide home-based instruction. The form shall include the name and age of the child, parent signature, date, address, and it specifies whether a certificated person will be supervising the instruction. And these are the only things that are required by the law. The declaration of intent to homeschool form that is currently on the Sequim School District website, and I brought a copy of it, and does ask for more information than is required by law, including the student birth date, the grade level, and the phone number. So my public comment is to ask you to work with Superintendent Nickels to make sure that this form is brought into compliance with the state law as soon as possible. And on behalf of homeschoolers everywhere, particularly those in the Sequim School District, I thank you for your attention to this matter.
All right. Thank you. Do we have anybody that online? Okay. And with that, that will conclude the public comment portion of the meeting. And that is going to bring us to our student board representatives portion. So again, welcome and welcome back and welcome, but go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had an amazing summer. To start off, I would like to say the start of school was pretty successful. It went very well. We had our back to school assembly on Friday, which went well as well. The counselors have been extremely busy with schedule changes. However, the last date to change schedules is this Friday, so I'm pretty sure they're relieved about that. We are also having our first football game this Friday, and we are very excited about that. And we will be having our club fair next Friday, so we are really excited for that.
Nice.
From what I've seen, just like Ariana was saying, the back to school has been really great. I've heard a lot of great things from my peers. And I would agree that the assembly went really well. And yeah, from what I've seen in sports, my sister's in tennis. I'm in tennis, my sister's in volleyball. Those are going great. Leadership's been going great. That's what I've seen. And yeah, I think it's gonna be a great year.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. Look forward to hearing more. So,
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Yeah,
on
sure.
that? Just about the club fair, is that this coming Friday or the following Friday?
The following Friday.
Okay, great, thanks.
okay. Next, we're going to transition to reports to the board. And first report, we have first day of school report from Superintendent Nickels.
Well, I'm excited to report that we've had two first days because we had a first day of school for our first graders through seniors, and then we had a first day for kindergarten today. So we're really excited. Here are some photographs that are fresh from our campuses, students coming back and being not only photogenic, but happy to be back. And I think that the lead up to these days has been very well done. The bottom half of these photographs are kindergarten families and students today. And of course, that's always an exciting day to see. And I myself visited the stadium lot to watch the kindergartners making their way on the transfer bus system. And we have that down. We have a bus driver named Veronica who runs that transition for them. And it was very well done. I'd also like to share that the start to school at each of the campuses was smooth. However, I want to commend so many people that make that happen, because for you to have a smooth start, it takes preparation on the front end. And so I want to acknowledge that there were many events that happened prior to the school doors opening on the first day. And here's a chart that just gives you some of those events that led up to this. We had the playground ribbon cuttings at both elementary campuses. We had Timberwolf Days at our middle school, which was 2 different slots of time that people and students could come. Back to school fair with the Boys and Girls Club supported. Link Crew freshman orientation at the high school, which is always a great orientation activity. We had Wolfpack Day at the high school as well, along with back to school nights at both Gray Wolf Elementary and Helen Haller Elementary. And then we had the register to ride system through our bus center. And I want to let you know that we have over 1,300 students registered to ride now. And that is a fantastic database for us to be able to get messages out, make sure that routing information is updated. So we've got the launch of that. I would say to you in visiting schools that once students were in their classrooms, it's so quiet, very well organized, people absolutely engaging. I was walking down the high school hallway, and it was really truly barely 8:40, and already just academic instruction. I was walking by a math class and they were already discussing triangles and angular formations. It was very impressive. So we're right back to business, and obviously great students to have welcome back. So thank you to everyone who's made the effort to have that liftoff. Do you have any questions about the first days of school?
I do have one. I noticed that there was a delay in getting the messages with the busing
Yes.
out.
Let
But
me explain that.
thank you.
So when we determined that we need to send a message through our Skyward system, that's going out to emails. And if families have Gmail specifically, Google actually holds large bodies of emails to make sure they are not spam. So we sometimes have, if we send over 1,000 emails, which we do, we end up with batches that can be held by Gmail and scanned before they're released. That happened that evening. We actually sent the message at 4:06. It didn't arrive at some boxes until 4:56 or later. And then I did have questions about, why'd you send it at 4? Well, we were at Gray Wolf itself out back with the buses, trying to help with getting people situated on their routes and making sure that we didn't release the buses that very first night until any students who had been out front waiting had been placed on a bus if they had just been needing to go on a bus instead of having pickup. So that is the way all of those events unfolded. And we have talked to Gmail and Google, and they just have their spam monitoring, and Swim School District is not going to disband that. Thank you.
Maybe a message out to parents, letting them know if they have Gmail, like I do. That's my primary one that I use. That maybe there, I think there's a way you can say trust this if it comes from
Oh, sender.
schools.org. Then they would know that that email shouldn't go to spam and it should go into their inbox. I haven't set that up yet, but now that I know that's an issue, I will set that up as a
Great.
trusted email recipient. And I would encourage other families to do the same.
Thank you very much. It's a great recommendation.
I just have a question. Have subsequent days been better? I mean, or just slightly better, or is everything sort of more or less on time now?
Yes, day 2, we definitely had improvements. Director Hall is following me, and he's going to give a report as well, so he'll speak to that. But I will say today was the first day of kindergarten. So we actually put out an early morning message, knowing about Gmail, that we anticipated up to 30-minute delays because we're getting students where they need to go for the very first time.
Thank you.
Are we, I know we're talked about the different notification systems, I think like text messaging when needed to. Is that still something that we're, well, I know that's like sometimes for an emergency kind of thing, but
We have that
So-
capability.
okay.
So
That's
yes,
still
we will
something
be
we're kinda
using it.
pursuing when needed. I don't
Mhm.
know. Okay,
Yes.
nice. Okay. Anything else? Other questions? Okay. Transportation update. Yes. Welcome, Dawn. Another year.
I forgot my glass. This working?
Yep.
Mhm.
Oh, cool. So it's getting warm in here. I know we want to get short, so see ya. So welcome back, folks. If you, last year, I introduced one of my favorite sayings. It's improvise, adapt, and overcome. And that's what you do on the first day of school always, right? And so that's what we did. We were running late, and Kevin, my router, the very next day goes, "Holy mackerel, what happened?" Because it was dead quiet the next day.
Mhm.
So as you know, we've been in the process of doing some implementing some changes with our new routing software, Smart Tag, and so on. And we've implemented the first phase of that, where the students were able to get their cards, and we've got the tablets and things, and it's a really cool system. The students get on, they log on, and their name pictures pop up on the computer. We're able to know where they're going and so on. We notified folks, parents and families at the end of the last school year that this coming school year that we would be looking and having to reevaluate all of our routes, improve efficiencies, as well as some other things that we needed to look at. We lost 3 drivers at the beginning over the school year or over the summer. And in looking at our routing, we went from 18 to 15 routes, which is going to help us immensely as far as our efficiencies and our ratings and things like that. A little fuller buses, which we're intending on doing, and the routes may be just a smidge longer because of it, not too terribly much longer. But and as with everything else, we will continue to look at those and reevaluate those routes over the next week or two, just to make sure, because there's always going to have to be some fine tuning with everything that you do. The second phase that we'll be going into with the routing system is implementing the parent app, where the parents will be able to, we will be able to send alerts to the parents over the parent app. The parent will be able to go on to their parent app and see how far out the bus is from where their student is. They'll be able to see what route the student's riding and so on. And that will be a really cool thing. We're hoping to start implementing that towards the end of the month or into October. There was some some confusion on the first day, and I'm going to take a lot of responsibility for that. In April, we had some training for the secretaries at the schools called Campus Portal. And all of us forgot about what we had in that we had access to until we called Smart Tag and said, hey, we're kind of in a quandary here. What's going on? They reminded me of Campus Portal. And if we had logged into Campus Portal, for each school, we could have printed out a sheet that showed every single student what route they were on, as well as some other things that would have been really helpful that I just forgot about. So we're aware of that now. And so take a deep breath on that one. So I've been driving. We have a driver that is out with a broken arm. So I'm down on that. We have one person that's going through training now to become a driver. We have another person, a former employee that we just hired back, that's going to be the sub, and I have 3 that are completing their pre-employment process to start training. So hopefully the next couple of weeks we can start gearing up. It'll take 5 to 6 weeks to get everybody ready to go, but hopefully by the end of October, we will have subs and able to count on those folks. And I won't be driving as much. I'm really looking forward to that. So, field any questions?
Yeah, I guess one of the questions is around the efficiencies there, and just where I've been hearing from folks just kind of some concerns as the kind of the road bumps that go along with that, and just changes with student schedules, and also I'm thinking of mainly our youngest students as to how long they might be on the bus, that sort of thing. I wonder if you can go into maybe a little more detail about how we're addressing some of those things and or still making tweaks as we continue to try to improve.
Well, let's continue to make some tweaks. Driver availability, one of the things that we do need to really look at, because we have been for years in the 70th percentile or less as far as our funding, our allocation or transportation. One of the things that I'm reminded of a lot of SQUIM, like the districts I've either lived in or worked in, are rural districts. And a lot of times you're on a bus for longer than an hour. I will speak to my own experience. My daughter in high school was on a bus for 2.5 hours, one way. So a total of 2.5 hours a day on a bus. So I understand where parents, trying to get their kids home as quickly as we possibly can. And especially on a single tiered system where where there's more stops on a single tiered system than there would be on a double tiered system, which would run quicker. However, so, we do the best we can. And I would say probably an hour to an hour and 15 minutes is what we're shooting for. There might be one route that might be a smidge over, but not much more.
Yes. Okay.
You mentioned the underfunding. Is that funding from the state, or is that something we could improve on here locally?
Well, what we're doing is improving on locally to help the funding from the state. Because there's several things that they look at when they look at efficiencies. One, how many buses are we running? How full those buses are running? Because the state doesn't recognize the size of a person. I mean, if I sit in a seat, I really don't want a second person sitting next to me. However, the state recognizes that a 28 seat bus holds 84 people. And that's what they're looking at. A 26 seat bus holds 77. The reason why it's an odd number is one of the back seats is only built to hold 2 people, which holds 3/4 of one. So, looking at trying to put as many people as we can, I'm shooting for around 60 on the buses. Because that's realistic. for me as far as how many kids are on the bus, the size of the students that are on the bus and so on. And then they're also looking at the distance between stops. Are we overlapping stops? You know, for instance, last year I shared a couple times. We had a couple areas that we had, like on Old Olympic Highway, we had 3 routes within about a 3/4 mile distance making stops when that should have been 1 route instead of 3. So those are some of the things that we looked at. So
So it's state funding and improving our own efficiencies
so by
to moving that, so that we lessen that gap.
correct. So by filling the buses fuller, reducing the number of buses that are out on the highway, that's going to increase our efficiencies. So for instance, last year, we were running 18 general ed routes. So we had 23 total routes last year. Well, 25 total routes last year if we can include our special needs routes and our 2 McKinney-Vento routes. But one of the things I'm looking at mostly as far as improving the efficiencies on is our general ed routes. So we had 18 general ed routes running last year. OSPI, after they did all their calculations and things, told me that they figured we should be running 14. So that is one of the things they look at, and because we have to send all of our routes in, they have a person down there that whatever things they do, and they figure all this out, and they've got all these formulas. And as you know, you've heard me say this, the STARS system, the funding system for transportation, really penalizes rural districts a lot. So
And there is a component though that drives funding from the state that's specifically based on the actual ridership, right? We do counts periodically. and
that is part of it as well. So what our ridership is, and they look, so the total number, then how many are on each bus and the routing and so on. And, I had a class on STARS in July that goes in a little bit deeper, and we're going to be working on some things, and hopefully that will help us out even down the road, improving some of the things that we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah, just wondering if there does become a balancing act that of course we have to keep in mind, because
Yeah.
if routes get to be a point where they're not as felt like it's not serving the community as well from an efficiency, if that then decreases ridership, which would potentially decrease funding.
So one of the things I'm putting together, I have it in draft form. And one of the things I've been looking at is a 10-year bus replacement plan. Because we have coming down the road, we have a period of time where in the past where there were a significant number of buses purchased at one time. Those are all going to go off at one time. And if we aren't replacing as we go along, 1 or 2 a year at least, when we hit that, we're going to lose that as far as the depreciation and so on. But looking at that and replacing the buses, what is the need and how can we do it? So like if we have the most farthest out route that to improve it, to try and reduce the amount of time, there's a bus, they call it a C2, which is a smaller bus. It's a 60 passenger bus rather than a 77 passenger bus. It makes more sense to put something out there on that with a little bit smaller bus that will take that slack up when maybe, it makes it more efficient if we're running 30 to 35 on that bus rather than a 77 or 84 passenger bus with only 35 people on it. So those are the things that I'm looking at.
Okay.
I'd just like to add a couple of things.
Sure.
Related to the parent app. We're very excited that part of what the parent app will allow is parents to be interactive with us. So if they have changes they need to make in the daily plan, they can go into the app and let the secretarial staff know at each school. And we're hopeful that once this is released, people will always do that before 2 o'clock so that we can organize all the slips that have to go out to let people know. Of course, Smart Tag was designed so that we can manage ridership counts more efficiently. We were counting and turning in, paper tally marks, but the smart tag should work very well for us that way. And then as far as efficiencies go, Don and I have already talked about the point that you make. There is a tension between having a efficient route that is formulaic to STARS funding through the state. And then there is the efficiency you need because of the geography that you are personally running in any one district. So we are talking about that, and we recognize that there are a couple of routes that are at this time challenging. So we're looking there. And I like the tweaks because that's what we constantly talk about. And then I also want to let people know that the two-tier system that he intimated, I have had many school bus drivers, and I know Don has, speak about the potential discussion they would like to see around a two-tier bus system, because in the STARS formula, it matters how much you use your buses that you have. And so if it might seem counterintuitive, but if you use your bus more, you can get more funding credit for that. And so we just need to look at what that could look like, what it would mean in the school. We've already talked to our community about different start times, and that really didn't get any lift off. So I'm not sure that a two-tier bus system would have any different reaction, but it's important that we put the ideas out there. And the bus drivers are doing this every day, so I trust in them that they're seeing what we might not see because they're out driving it. And Don is one of those. So more
Yeah.
to come.
Yeah, and just to speak back, because that was one of the things I learned in my class, and I brought it back and shared with Superintendent Nickels, is if you're, again, say two-tier, we're running 15 routes. You turn around and show that they're running 30 times in the morning time, and there's 70 kids. They're not looking at it as 35 on each one of those. They're looking at it that we're maximizing the number of times we're using that bus. So 30 times round trip is better than 15, but it's still at 70. So that shows a huge increase in efficiencies. I've been two-tiered director, and I've gone from a single tier to two-tiered, and elementary ridership for sure, when we did that, skyrocketed. So
Yeah.
just some thoughts.
One thing I'll add, just a positive thing, although kind of intertwined with a negative thing too. I'm not negative, but rocky start anyway. But I know on Friday, my kiddo the bus was running a little bit late. I don't know what it was, 10 minutes, wanted to make sure he didn't miss it, and had called the transportation office, and they were able to tell us right where the bus was. So get kind of peace of mind from a parent perspective. Oh, so okay, it's still coming, because I was already saying, oh, we gotta figure out how we're gonna get our kiddo to school and all that. But no, it's coming. It's about a mile away or something. And that real time feedback was certainly, and although it wasn't through the parent app, but it was through a phone call anyways, but still pretty real time feedback. And so yeah, so just to add
Yeah, the nice thing about that is if and when I get to sit at my desk in the morning time,
that.
just like that, we were able to look up and see where that bus is. Things happen, just speaking from this morning, I'm running late. I pull in, Superintendent Nickels is in the parking lot, and I had a kindergartner on the bus whose backpack erupted. It's all, I'm being showered with pencils. And all of her stuff is there. So we had to take a little bit of time to try and get that cleaned up and ready to go so we can get kids off the bus. And when it happened, of course, when that happens, all of your elementary kids also erupt. So we had to gain a little control. So, yep. So this morning I was one of those guys that was running a smidgen late.
Yeah.
Because things happen.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, definitely, please extend on behalf of the board our thanks to not only to you, but your entire staff and drivers. We know things are rocky getting off, starting in any school year with changes. And so please extend on our behalf our appreciation for working through and just getting our kids safely to from point A to point B is certainly important. And also being that first face that they see. So,
Yep.
yeah, just if you can share that with your folks, that'd be great.
I will, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
They, as I've said before, they're a great group of folks. We asked them to call their families this year to make that contact, to let them know.
Mhm.
And I've had an opportunity to talk with some of some of those drivers about that. It was a really good experience for them. I've had an opportunity to talk to some families. They really like that. Also, it's interesting, we were talking about spam and things like that. One of the things is too, is when our phone number pops up, sometimes they don't answer it. So I've made sure that everybody, when they called the families, that they notated the time that they called, the message that was left and everything else. Because we did get some calls saying, hey, I didn't get any notification. And we were able to verify that the driver did call at a certain time. And then we always, inevitably, I always hear this, oh, well, I never answer that phone anyway, when I see that number. So next time you see a school district phone number pop up, please answer the phone.
Right.
It might be me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. And that's gonna bring us to our superintendent report.
Okay. So I'd just like to say that this photograph tonight is from one of our kindergarten classes this morning. And so our kids are right down to it with their teachers, and it's very special to see. I just want to thank everyone who's in our school districts, from, of course, the classroom to the cafeteria to custodial, and our paraeducators that are supporting. Everyone is putting their energy forth and their best foot forth to help these students have a great liftoff. So it's been really impressive in our schools. Okay, there is a report there.
Thought it was Tracy testing your improvising
Well,
skills.
I can just tell you about it.
Yeah.
So,
There was a report.
okay. Okay, let me just go to the original. One moment, please. Okay, well, I have it here. It's small, so I'll just tell you what's in it. Okay, I'll send it to you. We sent a considerable sized team to the PLC Institute in Seattle. And we had representatives from every single school, along with our administrative team going with them. And we took a school bus. And I'd like to thank Tom Kelly for being our driver. He was fantastic. And we have found that through this experience, that teams have come back to their buildings and changes have already taken place, such as schedule changes at some of the buildings, because there was recognition that students need extra time to learn when they are struggling. We have had teams decide that they're going to have certain scheduling with their PLC meetings and how they're going to run those priorities. We've had discussion about mission, vision, values, and goals that need to be discussed at each building, and how teams would like to get liftoff with that. One of the most significant discussions I heard was around the fact that teachers really valued that looking at standards and paring down all of the state standards that teachers are expected on a list to review to essentials that need to be taught and learned. And then other standards that we want to make sure we introduce. So there's a lot of great work going on, and I see Robbie's here tonight, Becky's here tonight, Donna's here. They all attended, and I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say about the experience, but I think it was top notch as far as caliber of the professional development, but the collaboration was really the engine behind it.
I would be happy to say something. I've never not been happy to say something. Looks like some. Okay. Still on? Perfect. Just as Superintendent Nickels is saying,
PLC is a powerful tool in schools. If you aren't familiar with professional learning communities in education sense, the short version is that it's almost 3 decades old of researched, action researched, empirical researched. I can't stress enough how researched it is, effective practices. And so they really center around accessing the strengths of each of the different educators and groups of educators and identifying how best to serve your student population for specific targeted goals. And that can run a wide range of things. Short version, we got to get stuff that was good for elementary and secondary. We got to get stuff that was good for small group settings, large group settings. We got to get stuff that was good for PE, art, math, the whole range. We got to have one-on-one collaborations with national leaders in their fields of developing this practice. It was a very powerful session. And I got to see Pike Place Market for the first time, which was amazing. Super cool. Yeah, really had a good time. But I would say that for the high school staff, the big takeaway more than anything else was a belief that we can develop and grow as a team, kind of like Carol Dweck growth mindset philosophy put into practice as a team. You know, it's really easy to think about yourself as a fixed person. I can do this, I can't do this. And of course, growth mindset is that you can and you can't yet. Well, we got to see that in terms of, well, how can we facilitate our meetings? How can we talk about student growth goals? How can we talk about testing matrices? And we got to apply that same type of mindset. And I've gotten to see, kind of as she was alluding to earlier, an amazing change in just the first week of school. So it was a really cool experience. I'm really grateful we got to go.
Did you catch any fish? I mean, throwing at the market?
No, and I heard there's a gum wall. I didn't chew any gum either. But, yeah.
Didn't miss anything with the gum wall.
I would also love to reiterate that the collaboration was the most amazing part. At Haller, we were able to bring 2 team members from every single grade level. So our instructional staff was represented very well. The beauty in that, which we didn't really see until kind of the end, the beauty in that is the people that went were a little nervous about bringing some of this back to the team and leading it. But they each have a buddy in their grade level. So they are able to move things forward. And if one person is like XYZ, the other person can say, and ABC, right, around PLCs. So it's, that piece has been wildly fascinating. People feel good about encouraging each other and also saying, yeah, we're not doing that. We did on our building day back, our PLC teams created norms for how they're going to operate with their teams, which we all received training on at the PLC. And they're interesting, but many of them said, well, we're professionals. This is how we're going to work together and treat each other. We had another team work with our ancillary services. So title and lap, that's reading and math. Work with them to get some consistent time for them to intervene, and the whole grade level will do a walk to read, walk to math model, utilizing all of our resources, which I love because we're using our resources more efficiently. And we don't always get more resources, but that's a helpful piece as well. So, and all of this has been teacher-led. Truly, they have come back and led with a lot of courage and a lot of grace for their team, but they know what to say now. It's really great. And so tomorrow we have our first building council meeting, which I'm not calling building council anymore. It's going to be our professional learning team with a 10 minutes for building council nuts and bolts. So we've even restructured our meeting so that it's a focus on PLC time. So we're all ready. We're ready to roll at the high school. So thanks for listening and for sending us.
So you can see the influence, and I'd like to thank Donna Hudson and Teaching and Learning for finding the grant money that would fit this cause and having us utilize this grant money that we often receive is for school improvement, academic achievement, gap closing measures, and there's no doubt that this will work toward that end. So that was great. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to share with you is that our strategic plan has taken a giant step forward. We took all of the different objectives that you spoke about at your board retreat this summer and that administrators spoke about at their retreat this summer and put those in front of the educators at our back to school days. And it was wonderful to watch this. They discussed, before they saw any input from the board or administrators, they brainstormed what they felt should be objectives under two categories: academic achievement for the K-5 group and graduation pathways for 6-12. And then they received yours and had to prioritize. And so we have lists, and that's what you would have seen tonight. We have lists of prioritized information from each of these groups. There we go. There's PLC. Okay. And now we have these prioritized lists that we will be summarizing and finding frequencies of which types of activities or initiatives have been named by multiple groups, and giving this back to all three larger groups to synthesize into identifying a particular number of goals a year so that we're off and running for each of our areas. So we still have work to do, but it's a nice step forward. Okay. Next. Won't go? Okay, well, the next is long-range facilities planning. I want to let you know that we do have a special board meeting that was planned for October 1st. And so this very month, the long-range facilities group will be meeting twice for two considerably long agended meetings to get a recommendation ready to come forth to you. I really want to make sure this is clear far and wide so that people are tuning in during the month of October, because we're going to be having a public feedback month. So we'll be making some visits to schools to inform staff about the long-range facilities recommendation and what that means. We'll be going out to different groups such as Rotary, Chamber, talking to our veterans, making sure we're talking to City Council so that we have the information about what recommendation is on the table. And it will be also important that people know that we're putting out a survey, so people's feedback will be collected and we'll be able to make sure we can see the frequencies of which people are interested in certain attributes of the recommendation or might be asking us to look at something differently. This is all on a trajectory that in November, if we're going to make the decision that the board wants to support a bond or a capital levy, that it needs to be well prepared for a proposition as early as December. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the community understanding of the recommendation is key. And so we'll be moving out, and I just don't want anyone to miss it. Any questions about that work or what's coming up? And please don't forget, there is a website. So anybody can look at all of the meeting agendas that have happened with the long range facilities planning group, look at some of the presentations that have been put forth before the group, and be caught up on the information. Okay, back to school fair. I did allude to this earlier, that it had been one of the preparation events for school, but there are a few things I'd just like to share. One is about community partnerships. That is one of the goals of our strategic plan. And this year, with the planning of the back to school fair, Megan Like, our public information officer, was part of the planning team with the Boys and Girls Club and other entities that had members. I just would like to thank the Boys and Girls Club for their venue and for helping with the setup every year. Robbie and Becky were also in attendance at that event, and we had a good number of people visit our table. We did try to show the importance of attendance, and we're going to be talking more about attendance awareness because it is attendance awareness season, that's for sure. We wanted people to know about our clothing closet that does support students who may be interested in those resources. And we wanted folks to know about Ready to Ride and school lunch. All menus will be online this year in a new way, and we hope people take the time to look at that and let us know if there are any needs they have. So I appreciate the partnership. Okay, capital projects. We had a absolutely busy summer with capital projects. One of the most significant projects that did happen this summer was one that is relatively invisible, so I've put it here. And that is the HVAC at the high school and OPA. You know, you don't really look up on a roof and see these massive units, but right now we have people writing into facilities to please ask that the heat be turned down because we finally have it, but we just don't want it yet. However, this capital project was supposed to be completed in 2023. But as you may recall, we've talked about this many times, supply chain issues did push that project forward and forward and forward. And so we have recognized that this year, we had the funding from the 2023 year to put forth to those projects. We were able to get those finished this year. We are going to be coming to you to talk about how the capital projects that spanned those 2 years, we recognize carryover projects need different types of accounting. So we're going to be coming to you about that because we have a wonderful situation that so much work got done because of the carryover that we have to be talking about that and how the books are shown for it. We also were able to get the track project completed. We see the lighting there. This is new lighting where we were able to preserve the poles that were original, but we were able to replace with LED. And so the lumens from an LED, of course, are much brighter. And we also will have a much lower bill to run them. So it's very exciting. And it was a photograph of the lighting test that we had that evening. So it's going to be quite a football season and soccer season. Of course, you've heard about the playground, and we had a wonderful write-up in the Sequim Gazette. We're very appreciative of that. And we're going to be meeting with the OPA parent group regarding playgrounds here coming up later this month as well. I just can't say enough. There's the bark that was donated. I think I mentioned that last meeting. So there's a lot of good energy. But I also will say to you that we got so much done that we now need to turn to the management of all of that and paying the bills. We do have funding from the capital levy coming in, of course, every time taxation is summarized. So that's both November and April. Any questions about capital projects? Okay, we'll go to enrollment. I thought you'd like to know what our first couple of days has yielded us. These numbers are not in stone because count day actually comes up on the 4th day of school. So we're not there yet. So at Grey Wolf, we do have 474 students enrolled. We had budgeted for 477. So we're very close. And I will tell you the effect of last year was that we had students who did end up coming a bit late. Okay, we have an enrollment at Helen Haller of 516. We had budgeted for 490. So I will say to you, I don't want to say that we're up over last year's start, because last year's start, we started strong. The way we budgeted was very conservative around how the end of the year looked, because we did have a pattern year over year over year of losing students. So hopefully this year we can work very hard to maintain our enrollments right where they are. So you'll see through each of those, the middle school's at 550 right now, and we had budgeted 532, 742 at the high school. OPA and DVS, their combined was budgeted for 223. So we're just under that a bit. So we have 2,500 students enrolled right now before we count Running Start. And those are students who go to Peninsula College full-time for their classes. Right now, we're anticipating having 53 students who do that, and we had budgeted 57. So before Running Start, we had a budget of 2,454. So we are right there, right in the pocket for enrollment. But we want to continue to talk about the strategies to maintain and try to get out of that historical arc of having students depart over time. And in high school, that's challenging because students complete their credits. Okay, so that's always going to be an aspect that we will support if we have students finishing their credits. But of course, people might move away, but we hope that will be filled with students who'd want to come. And we've met many families in the past few days who are new, many students who are new, and very happy to be here. All right, that completes my report.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I had heard that we might be short on laptops for the high school. Or have you heard anything about that? And do we have a plan for addressing that?
Yes, we actually have laptops that we have that need to be repaired.
Mhm.
And so we will be continuing to run those cycles, and that will help to fill some of the carts at the high school. We also recognize that there are some high school students who bring their laptops. We don't have a funding stream identified at this moment to buy new laptops for the high school this year.
Mhm.
We do recognize that we need to have this just multi-year rotation to make sure new devices are sought.
Mhm.
So as the students start in their classes, we'll get more information. And Bo, since he's here, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
So we still have devices at the high school that are in condition for being issued. But with the middle school and the and OPA and Gray Wolf starting their map testing, instead of devoting our man hours to getting those high school laptop carts filled out as fast as possible, we're doing everything we can to make sure those schools are supported and getting their testing cycle started, because they also have needs for their laptops. So as we get them to their sort of finish line, so to speak, to be able to fully test as large of groups as they need, then we'll be able to sort of reallocate time to getting the high school's laptop carts filled out, because we still have devices to issue that don't need repairs, but we also, as Regan mentioned before, we also have devices to repair that will be able to sort of backfill those spares for additional needs.
So between those two, you think we'll end up with enough or close to enough?
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything you want to share about it
Me,
from the high school side?
we're eager for laptops.
Okay. Well said. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Regan? Okay. That is gonna move us to our board business, and we're gonna start with 9.01. We have an approval for a bank authorization. Anything you want to say on this?
So with the departure of Darlene Apland as our business manager and the implementation of Victoria Ballant as interim business manager, along with Steve McIntyre contracted for his accountant services, the Bank First Federal has asked that we please change the chart of authorized users to sign checks and also to answer any questions. I'm putting forth these names because after discussion, not only with our internals, but also at the bank, these are the three names that don't cause any issue with having conflict of duties, because we have to be careful that we're not crossing duties that people would have in the management.
With that, I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the authorization letter for the bank account signatures.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, well, actually, before we do that, we do have a process where we ask for advisory votes for our student board reps. Do you want to cast an advisory vote on this one? Okay, all right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. It's gonna move us to our next agenda item. Speaking of, I just. All right, board committee roles. Yeah, these are the board committees we'll take a look at for 24-25 school year. We, for many of our committees, will have either one or two, no more than two board members, because we want to avoid a quorum, but one or two board members as needed. And so, some folks have served on these and some folks have requested to serve. And so want to take a look at this again. Anything else to add on this, or just kind of talk through it, see where folks want to go?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I see that I've only got one assignment, and I would be willing to do either instructional material committee or wellness committee. Looks like there aren't any board members signed up for that. So if you want a board member on those committees, I'd be glad to do that.
I think we should load Pat right up.
Yeah. Hearing no objections.
Well, it looks like Michael, he's tapped out over there. Yeah, Larry too, I guess.
I know, we're looking at a new finance study team, and I had expressed interest with to Regan about being on that, and I am glad to be still taking part in the long range facilities group, so I definitely would want to stay on that if possible. So those two are plenty enough for me for the time being. And there's a need. So
I do have a question. What is the difference between the education committee and the instructional material committee?
That was.
I beat you to it. Or do we know that yet? Or because we're just forming these groups?
Yes.
Why they're kind of separated out? Because I thought they were within the same.
Okay, so the instructional materials committee is a very specific committee that's looking at curriculum rotations. So generally, every so many years, a curriculum needs to be reviewed, determined if there are new materials that need to be sought or different practices that need to be considered for that study area. And that committee makes decisions about reviewing materials, piloting materials, and coming back with recommendations. The education committee is a wider berth. So that is looking at many of the different programming aspects that we have going on in our schools. And so it could be anything from curriculum to practices that we do to different types of initiatives that we're running in a school at any one time. So it wouldn't necessarily be about curriculum or rotation to switch it up. Donna, anything you'd like to add to that description?
I think that's well said. So we, right now, we're not in a position to do a lot of new curriculum. We may look at opening science back up this year. So I think it's just as Regan said, the education committee, one of the things we'll probably want to look at early on is PLCs and give you more information about PLCs, how we're running PLCs, what our schedule looks like for PLCs, the outcomes we hope for. So it's just a little deeper dive into some of the things that you hear either coming to the board or will be coming in future meetings to the board.
And then your statement of we're not in a position that you're talking budgetary, more of a financial limitation, right?
Just that we
Or
have
we're just not
a
up yet?
social studies curriculum, we have a math curriculum. We've
Okay.
had a lot of curricular adoptions. And so really the
Kind of
only
off
one that's
cycle.
out there is science, we had to suspend it because of finances last year. But because of that, science departments have found things like open science, which is a free service. So we probably will open it later in the year, but right now everybody's a little bit happy with what they're doing for science, so we won't necessarily have to open that.
Perfect. Thank you.
What's the wellness committee? Is that is that staff wellness or,
Yes, that is, stems from the 5515 secondary trauma in the workplace from
Mhm.
SBI.
Mhm.
We were required to put a wellness committee together based on that policy.
Mhm.
So it is staff.
yeah.
It's brand new, so I think being a part of it from the get-go could be very interesting.
Yeah,
So
I
appreciate
agree.
the support.
So, yeah, I'd be interested in that. If you're looking for a person for that.
I think as it relates to the secondary trauma, sometimes I think that particularly when we think about those that are, you know, a lot of times in the social work field and other fields where you're dealing with students frequently that have experienced this, you do start to see that. I mean, there's some significant data about how that could start to, and you see this with,
absolutely, yeah.
you certainly see this with law enforcement
Yeah.
as well. You see it with, you know, many different
Yeah.
industries, how
Yeah.
those affects, and yeah, we want to take care of our folks.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, leads to burnout and other
Yeah.
problems.
All right, so which ones, Pat, did you say you were
Either
interested in?
curriculum or wellness, but probably between the two of them, I'd prefer wellness, just.
Both is an acceptable answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm a pretty busy gal. So I don't know, but yeah, both would be fine. It sounds like instructional materials, there's not much going on with that right now, so.
Okay. Any other requests, changes,
Volunteers.
additions, volunteers? I mean, one is fine, two
Yeah.
is fine, just not three or more. But Larry, you good?
Yeah.
All right.
And I
enough
will
said.
say, if you choose that we move forward with the bond or levy, we will all have some important dates and times to be attending. So I think manageability is important for you, for you all.
Okay. I don't believe any sort of formal action is needed regarding that, right? So I think that's good. All right, we'll go ahead and keep on moving. So next we have legislative priorities discussion. And this was sort of in conjunction with, we were talking about the General Assembly discussion as well, but then we sort of opted to keep this as two separate agenda items because one with General Assembly sort of dictates what we do as so far as WASDA is concerned and their priorities, which isn't necessarily, doesn't always have to be the same as SQUIM school board's legislative priorities. And we will, so we'll talk about the General Assembly a little bit and how we want to proceed there. But we did want to talk about how this is actually two separate conversations to some extent. Obviously, there's some overlap, but do want to just mention we do want to talk about our legislative priorities and how that's going to support the students in the SQUIM school district. And we're coming up with another long session that's going to be starting in January, legislative session. And we thought we should not hold off on this conversation. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up to see if folks have thoughts.
Had the district priorities changed since last time? Our last set? We had like 3 or 4 that we were pushing. or
Yeah.
not pushing, supporting,
Reporting that we thought would be the most impactful.
and I'm not aware that those were satisfactorily addressed by legislation. I mean, obviously the CTE facility, but I'm not sure that was one of our prime priorities
Oh,
at the time.
Special education,
ed.
transportation. We talked about just the regionalization
Mhm.
in our area here. We also discussed that just the staffing allocations in,
Typical model.
correct,
Mhm.
very challenging for us. So those are things I think that still remain as discussion items and priorities.
And the two that I have also that weren't mentioned was local control and no unfunded mandates. In
Mhm.
addition, I think it was stuff we discussed last time.
Do we, I mean, can we presume, I know we were over, as it relates to special education, I know we are over the funded percentage in previous years, and I know they did increase it by, I think, 1%,
Mhm.
but I believe we, at the end of last year anyway, we were still over.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, is it safe to presume that we're still over based on, or do we know yet based on our IEPs and whatnot? if we're
I
still
don't
over?
have the answer for this year yet, but I will tell you that already we have seen that there are needs that students are presenting that are very unique and challenging, and so we want to support them in the best way possible. We do have out-of-district placements that we're needing to fulfill because that is the best support for students. So we are going to continue to be challenged in those ways. And let me also share, there are positions, speech language pathologists, for instance, very difficult to come by. So we are relying on our ESD to provide us with these services. But that's a challenge for a district that is a distance away from the ESD when you're sharing staff. In some cases we're having the full-time equivalent serve here in SQUIM. It's a challenge for staffing that way.
So I'm of the mindset that fully funding special education should still be, not only because it's that's funding that is, of course, our students, a lot of times our most vulnerable students, but it also, we know there's an obligation to pay for those services regardless. So until it's fully funded, we will be forced to take money from other spots to try to fill those needs, which is not a sustainable model. So I'm of the mindset that should still remain one of our priorities.
Is it considered too much of an overreach to sort of say, well, shouldn't one of our priorities just be fixing the inadequate prototypical model? I mean, how do you address that? I mean, that is the undercarriage of all of our problems, right? Is that, or, it is one of the main factors driving all of our problems, is that we have teachers who are fairly and appropriately compensated at X level. The state reimburses us for them at Y level. And we can't, we have there's nothing we can do about that except apply our levy funds to make up the difference, or make our staff smaller. I mean, what are the inputs? You can either lower staff pay, you can lower the number of staff, or you can try to find other sources of funds because the money you're getting from the state isn't enough. I mean, I don't know why we can't just say that, and I get it that saying, give us, throw us a bone for special ed, come on, give us 1% more for special ed. And, you go and you beg the legislature for 1% more. But it seems to me that you ought to just say the truth about what the problem is. They don't give us adequate general funding, and it's not just us, it's everybody. And I mean, I have to say, I was so alarmed listening to Dawn talking about how the state requires us to jam 3 kids onto a bus and make them ride for an hour and a half to get our funding up. I mean, I'm like, what is that? That is a ridiculous model, but we don't have any choice about it. That's the state model, but I mean, I just think, I don't know how we do it. I know that changes to the prototypical model, blah, 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 comes up in a WASDA thing from time to time. But I just feel like unless we just take it head on and people start saying, please stop giving us these little nibbles around the edges that is supposed to solve our problem, because the problem is you don't give us enough money to pay our teachers and our staff. And that's the problem. And, So I don't know. I don't know if that's a priority on a WASDA list.
I think it is because they keep referring to amply funding. I always like that word ample.
Mhm.
Ample means plenty,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that you're not sort of grabbing at each little bit
Mhm.
or just going for special ed or just
Mhm.
trying to ask for a few more pennies,
Mhm.
but amply funding. And
Mhm.
so I think WASTA does that. The disconnect is with the legislature itself that just continues this. They're sort of in an alternative reality
Mhm.
from our reality, and
Yeah.
that's true across the state. And I agree with you, the frustration
Mhm.
I feel looking at that. We can ask for ample funding every single year and it
Mhm.
doesn't, there doesn't seem to be any movement on that.
Well, and in fact, our share of the state budget is going down,
Yes.
Yeah.
and I mean, I think that needs to be addressed. I think that we should be very vocal about that. This is our paramount duty as a state legislature is to address education. And you look at all these other things that are going on out there and, uh, it just seems to me that if there is a priority that we can, that's how we can identify it, that's what we should do. And I think, I know that things don't happen overnight in the legislature, but, and I know that, I mean, when you consider that it took the McCleary case to finally get even somewhat reasonable funding, and just the absolute, teeth gnashing and, the challenge of getting the funding done, even with that McCleary decision on the books. I know it still is a challenge, but I just think that the school districts their messaging should just be a lot more aggressive about people need to understand what is happening in school boards when they're sitting there with budgets in front of them, trying to meet the needs of these students and constantly having to realize that they've got to select one thing or another because they don't have the funding. They have the mandates. You've got to serve this student. You've got to serve that student. You've got to serve this need, that need. You have to provide this service, all of which are worthy goals for the school district to be trying to pursue, but you don't have the resources to do it. And that leads to frustration on the parts of professionals. You have, counselors and stuff who don't have enough adequate time to really serve the needs of the kids they're trying to serve. And they're all doing the best they can, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't see I just think we ought to, anyway.
I don't disagree at all. I think, one of the things I think we have to be careful of if we're too broad, sometimes the message will be, it'll just look at dollars one year
Mhm.
versus dollars the next year,
Mhm.
and they'll say, well, it was increased.
Mhm.
Of course, it needs to be increased because every year we see increased costs. We have, our
That was
our-
increased.
our
Yeah, and how much
utility
did the
needs
cost
go
of
up.
diesel go up last year?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I feel like you just have to say, that's not adequate, I mean, for you to say, well, it's increased, yeah, but it wasn't even adequate to cover the cost of living. It wasn't even adequate to raise the cost to cover the expenses that this is intended, so all that MSOC stuff, it's not enough,
Right.
and so I get your point that, sometimes you just have to be targeted because if you're not targeted, at least if you target one little thing, it's like, okay, well, maybe we can get agreement
Yeah.
on this one little thing,
Or one big thing. Doesn't have to be a little thing, but targeted still.
yeah, well, I mean,
but-
I don't, what did they do with the special ed last year? Go from 13.5 to 15%, I think, maybe.
No,
don't
not
think it was
even.
that
Well, I think over the course of 2 years.
Over several
maybe,
years.
It went, but what is it at now?
I mean, really,
17%?
No,
Or
I think I went to 16 and a half or something.
15, but where is that? We're
But-
high, much higher.
I would argue, from what I've heard from legislators, not necessarily ours, I would argue that's ample funding. We gave you ample funding.
you mean
The
that's
fact-
their
The
position?
fact that you spend more, that's on your district, local control. That's on we gave you ample funding.
But when the funding model is based upon a non-rural model, then
Well,
like I
the-
said,
the
it goes back to
Prototypical
what.
model is the funding model that provides ample funding.
Well,
But because I've heard some of these
Yeah.
legislatures say, but we gave you an extra $100 million. They look at it, like you said, in dollars. They don't look at the 43% versus 51%. They say, we gave you $100 million. So I think trying to get a handle on this is, like you said, specifically, this is the amount of money we need.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I don't think
don't-
we should
and
let
don't smoke-
them frame the issue. We have to frame the
Right,
issue.
and then don't get into the ample funding. Mom, Dad, I need more allowance.
Mhm.
We're giving you enough allowance, Larry.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah,
you're
but-
not, because I need this, this, and this.
Mhm.
Well, you need to adjust your needs. I mean, it's kind of that,
But we don't have
then-
the option of adjusting our needs.
but we have levies, we have efficiencies, like Don called, there's a lot of things we can do in-house to make our money go further. But I agree, I think looking at it, coming up with specific needs for our district and with specific numbers.
It's just-
And not saying you should amply fund us. Well, how much do you need? Well, just ample.
No,
I-
you tell them exactly how much you need.
Yeah.
I would like to make a connection to something Michael said about unfunded mandates. I think it would be interesting to do a bit of an audit and see what types of staffing or services or requirements that we're facing from unfunded mandates over the past, I don't know, 3 years. And just see where we are stressed, because even though you might have the same position and in the staffing allocation,
Mhm.
it's funded.
Mhm.
The demands on the position
Right,
could have changed.
Mhm.
And so you actually need more than one.
right.
And I don't think we discuss enough of these specifics sometimes. And I do think getting away from generalities is smart so that we can pinpoint the problem. So that just comes to mind as an immediate way to
Well,
take
we're-
some
we're a
action.
Small enough district that we can do that. It's hard in like Seattle, they've got so many schools and so many issues. But I mean, we have one high school, we have one middle school, we have, two great, we have, like you said, the problems of even finding a staffer to do speech and language therapy, but we have a mandate to provide speech and language therapy services. So,
And my impression of the legislature or hearing, is they like to hear those kind of stories.
Yeah.
This is what we're funded.
Mhm.
This is our actual needs. And here's the stress it's causing, or here's a program we can't fund because we have this mandated shortfall over here. And so those just specific kinds of stories, I think, are real important, rather than just generalities. Well, abundancy and prototypical, all those are can be kind of amorphous. Like say, okay, here in Swim, this is the problem we're facing at the middle school. Boom.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I
I
agree
think
with
part of it too is that education has changed dramatically just in the last 20 years for the needs of the student. And I think in a lot of good ways that we now provide services that didn't used to exist. When
Right.
I think of my high school,
Mhm.
what was offered to us, there have been so many improvements and also so many greater needs in the 21st century that's something that I think the legislature and its members haven't really had to talk about. And I think that's part of the picture too, that they're funding, in some ways, they're funding an educational model that no longer exists.
It's the one they
And-
remember.
Yeah. And what they like it to be or whatever, but it isn't the reality on the ground. So the fact that we provide so much more for our students than ever before, that's something that deserves funding. And so that's part of it.
And the cost of maintaining technology and that kind of thing that didn't used to be
Yeah.
a cost that we had to carry and.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
think about leasing laptops and that whole program and everything, that's just so much more to do. And there's so much involved in it besides just the money layout. So.
Not to throw another curveball into this, but I just, my guess is that this is still gonna be a high priority, because we talked about long-range facilities planning as one example, but the rate at which the state matches those construction dollars, as well as the 60% supermajority threshold for bond rates, which I personally think should be just a simple majority. And the idea that we are going to start to look directly at some of our facility concerns, I'm wondering if that shouldn't be something that's put as a high priority given our current facility needs.
Because I see that in WASDA's proposals is that whole reevaluation of how to finance facilities and especially for rural districts. But, really moving on that.
But I think you're right. We need to come up with 3, 4, 5, 6 of our specific ones. Well, they have 124 or whatever it is. I mean, we can't have 124, 150 priorities. These are our 150 priorities. I think, we have to narrow it down to the ones that have the most impact. Changing the supermajority, yeah. Is it gonna happen? Probably not. Can we change it? No. So given that environment, when we go out for a levy or a bond, how do we do it? So that our local taxpayers will see the value in that.
Weren't they talking about maybe even taking it down to like 55%? That would even be a big improvement.
But I'm not satisfied. Don't wait for it.
Yeah.
No, I know, but we're talking about what we're advocating for though, right?
Well, we could advocate for that, or we could advocate for this is how we're gonna fund it in our district. Because we're not gonna probably get the state to change the constitution for SQUIM.
So advocate for things that we're likely to get.
Or can we have control?
One of the things that Representative Theringer had increased being part of or I shouldn't say just Representative Theringer, because it was all, it was passed by the House and the Senate, was the increased, the formulaic increase based on how much the state matches, and it did receive it's based on, there's a formula based on the district and the square footage and everything, and it did see it's not high enough, but it did see an increase that was much greater than previous legislative increases, but it's still not enough. But that is potentially an example of something to advocate for, where you can still see improvement. And when we do, those dollars do require us to run, or those essentially let us decrease the amount that we're needing to potentially ask for in the form of a bond. Because the state's matching more, therefore the cost of a building is less.
But those funds you don't get unless you do pass the bond.
Correct. Yes. So, but there's some, I see your point as to advocating for things that are gonna make, because that was able to get passed, whereas we're still waiting.
That doesn't mean we don't necessarily advocate for some of those other things. Also,
Yeah,
the
that
bigger
makes
at the
sense.
state level. But yeah, I think we need to focus in on what we need here in SQUIM. This is how we run we need to justify our expenditures to ourselves and to everybody, and this is what we need to run a quality school district for our kids to improve their educational outcomes.
So one thing that we could potentially do based on kind of the feedback that we've gathered is, just based on this conversation, is we could then come back to next board meeting, present based on just this discussion. All right, these are 4 or 5 items, 3 items, 5 items that we think, and then we could kind of take a look at that list.
When is that General Assembly? Sorry.
General Assembly is the 20th and 21st
September.
of September. But that doesn't affect our
Correct
legislative priorities.
On that note, what would potentially affect our own legislative priorities is if we did want to meet with representatives in this. So that's something we talked about regarding the agenda setting. This time of year does get a little more complicated regarding meeting with our representatives, because we don't know who our representatives are going to be in the next legislative session, because they haven't been elected yet, re-elected or elected, one way or the other. So there's many potential people out there. So
So all three of them, plus the governor, plus the superintendent of public education, schools. We got quite a few. Could
Well-
have quite a few new faces. I don't
Yeah.
know.
yeah. Well, and with three of them, but there's total of 6 people running for those 3 spots, right? So.
Yeah.
So, because one of the suggestions involved meeting with them prior to the legislative session.
Like in
Um,
December.
Yeah,
maybe.
potentially December.
Mhm.
We would know who they are
Mhm.
by December. So that would be, but knowing where our priorities are prior to that meeting might be beneficial.
Well,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
But
for sure.
It doesn't matter who gets elected, our priorities would still be the same.
Mhm.
Yes, I would agree. But it just depends on if we wanted to meet in December versus meet sooner. And just sooner gets a little more complicated because there's
Well, I
6
mean-
folks running versus 3
I mean,
folks.
we
but-
could do it in November, right? I mean, the election's the first week. We
Yeah.
Hopefully would know before Thanksgiving.
Depends on how close the elections are.
So, so why don't we, we'll come back with, a little bit more refined items and
Mhm.
kind of take it from there. And then we could still add to it or not.
There's one I want to add that didn't come up.
We talked about MSOC.
Mhm.
Okay, and I will say, when you have facilities that require as much care as ours do, the MSOC is inadequate.
Mhm.
So that would be one I'd want to just talk about when we do the refined list.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Want to
absolutely.
define MSOC?
Material supplies, operations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's a term we throw around all the time, but I'm sure people are,
That's true. Yes,
MSOC,
yes.
what's that? Because how education loves their
Acronyms.
acronyms.
Yeah. I'll mention too, the other one, I think somebody mentioned it briefly, but just the regionalization component where we are still, less than a 45-minute drive from the Kitsap Peninsula, closest elementary school, Kitsap Peninsula, yet that district is funded at 18% regionalization, where we're funded at 6% regionalization, which is a very big disparity, whether you want to look at it by per staff member or per student. It's still a pretty big disparity. I'm one that believes regardless of one zip code, we should be funding, providing that world-class education to each one of our students and competitive wages to our staff. So,
Well, and depending on who's listening in, if they're from Kitsap, we don't intend to take your money away. We don't intend to reduce your 18%. We intend to increase our 6%. That's always an argument. Next door, well, that's fine, but don't take away from us. So
yeah,
it goes back to we're just not amply funded,
Mhm.
yeah.
So we're fighting over, seem to be fighting over dollars.
whatever amply means.
Mhm.
There's an example of it.
Yeah.
Plentiful. I like it.
Plentiful. Well, I don't, that would be.
We did have multiple proposals that we did, that we passed or that we added to the WASDA. They're now actually approved in the WASDA.
Legislative priorities.
Yeah, legislative priorities. One was around regionalization that says if you're a bordering district or adjacent district, I think they said that regionalization should be no more than 2%, which was a recommendation from the statewide rebase committee. And so that was one of the amendments that we added and that were, but so far that hasn't been acted on. So that would be one I'd love to see follow through on, along with the other 10 items we talked about, but yeah, it'd be good to see, finally see some follow through on that, so. Yeah, okay. And with that is, we have our WASDA General Assembly coming up. And
Yeah, the
so,
General Assembly and just kind of a segue. I mean, just because WASDA passes a legislative priority doesn't mean it has passed as law. It just means this is what guides our lobbyists. If you want, the people, our advocates, they would probably like the word advocate rather than lobbyist. The advocates down in Olympia the WASDA advocates know how to support or not support certain things depending on how the 294 districts and 1,477 school board directors have instructed them. This is what we'd like to do. I know you've all read and memorized 124 pages. My guess is if you picked up last year's handbook, it pretty much looks the same as this year's, because a lot of the things just haven't changed. There were, my intention is to go with the recommendations of the legislative and resolutions committees. If they say do pass, as voting delegate, I'll say yes. If they say don't pass, I'll say no. There are a handful of maybe 10 or less of amendments and where they haven't made a recommendation. And I guess I will just use my best sense of where we are as best I can on those votes, but it's like 8 of them or so. And basically it is a whole day. The Friday is like 8 to 5. Saturday is like 8 to 2 to get through all these resolutions and individually discuss and vote on each one. Last year, there were some gamesmanship in points of order and call for the questions that rankled quite a few people, and they've tried to clean that up this year. So when you read through it, I mean, if there's something you absolutely, I haven't heard from anybody that, oh, they said do pass, and I think absolutely not. I haven't heard that from anybody. Because I think they're all reasonable and they've been probably well thought out and debated by that committee, those committees who we elect. We elect the legislative committee and the resolutions committee. We as school board directors have elected them to be our representatives. And they talked a lot and even more about all of these. So, and I haven't been privy to those discussions, but I'm going to trust their judgment at the end. General Assembly, and then they will, after General Assembly, they'll compile all of it and take a look and come up with, you know, the one pager. These are WASDA's 6 objectives that we want to, and sometimes last year, our 4 and their 6 were very similar. In other words, we have similar problems in every district. And so that's good. And then, they're changing the format on Day on the Hill, which doesn't seem to exist. I sent you an email about the changes. Not going to be in Olympia. Sounds like it's going to be over in SeaTac. It's going to be a Friday, Saturday, 11th and 12th, 10th and 11th, 11, 12. The Friday, Saturday before the session starts on the 13th. So Day on the Hill, you know, where we walk over to the state capitol after all that will change. So it's even more important that we meet with our representatives once the dust settles. So it's a brand new way of doing Day on the Hill.
Day on the Hill will not be on
Will not be
Hill?
on the actual hill.
Day on the Hill won't be on the hill, and it'll be
Stay in the conference room.
well now, there's no guarantee the legislators are not going to necessarily show up to CTAC
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Well, they'll be, oh, it'll still be before the session?
the day before the session. Yeah,
Still a lot of,
that would be meeting them on a Sunday at CTAC Hotel someplace. I don't think so. Most of the board directors would have gone home by then anyway.
well, I'll put this out. I think it'll be interesting to see how that happens. I definitely think it's important enough that we should still probably participate, however we choose to participate. And I do also think there is nothing that would stop us from still choosing on on a given day to make a trip down to Olympia. Make our own appointments with folks. And we talked about meeting with folks before the session, but we can also during a session. Make appointments and take a van down and still do that lobbying. Real time during the session, so that can be a SQUIM school district effort.
Might be more efficient than
Maybe,
tagging on to the WASDA.
yeah, and we can, you know, if there's select, you know, administrators even that can join or whatever. There was, at one point, I think 2 years ago now, I participated in, we had in Port Angeles, we had a trip that took a van trip down. We had, the Port Angeles board president, we had HR director, we had, superintendent, also, you know, couple folks from the union, which was the capacity I was going down there on. And we all came down and said, hey, these are the things that we're lobbying for. And so that could be an approach that we consider as well, so.
And I remember hearing the word come earlier.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
So we'll see, stay tuned for more information about all of that.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, just guidance for you, Larry, from my perspective anyway, because there are some real-time decisions that sometimes has to get made. Like you mentioned, there are some where the committee hasn't taken a position on, but also you get some amendments that are made real time, and then the committee doesn't have a time, even if the committee originally took a
Right.
position, that an amendment gets made and that could change it, and then you don't have a position. But I do think that's why you're in the position you're at, which is elected by us to be our representative down there. And
Right.
so we do,
And basically, WAS has advised, there won't be time to call the school board together to, how should I vote on
Right.
this change? I just have to
Right.
do the best I can.
Yeah.
And realizing what it is, I mean, I could vote no, and then the rest of you could say, why'd you do that? It doesn't change anything really, it just changes the recommendation from WASDA and how they proceed. I mean, several times in WASDA, because we haven't voted on how we see a certain subject that comes up in legislation, it's a great idea, but since we haven't spoken on it, WASDA won't take a position. They won't speak against it, but they just won't take a position. Now, what they're doing behind the scenes, that's, you know, we'll see, but it's a frustrating, interesting, exhausting process that they go through down there.
well, just know you're in that position to represent us. And we, you know, trust that you will do that. It can't
Well,
rule out the time when it's like none of us would have agreed. But I mean, I think you're going into it with good faith.
I'm the oldest one here. I know what's right.
Okay, that's the attitude. That's what we want to hear.
You kids, you know.
I think it's more like I'm one of 293 votes. At the end of the day, the odds that I'm gonna be the tiebreaker are slim.
But if it comes down to it, we're gonna let
I
you
will
know.
make you proud.
All right. Anything else on, Larry, anything else on
No,
General Assembly?
I will be there
Thank
all
you.
day Friday and all day Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes.
very much for your service, sir.
And if I can't be for some reason, I'll, you know,
I hear Pat isn't doing enough
Pat,
on the
she's
side.
volunteered for things.
I'm gonna be taking in some shaking
One of us
Dan and
should-
Ashland, so sorry.
One of us should be there to represent SQUIM School District.
Yeah.
So may have to give off my credentials
Oh.
to one of you.
That is something to note that, you know, especially because all of us can still
Mhm.
attend and be part of it and watch it.
Mhm.
There's just the one voting delegate, but if for some reason that there is a way to share voting credentials. So
Mhm.
if for some reason that were to come up, there's some, I don't know all the details involved.
Yeah, there were a
with
couple
that.
times last year, I think you wanted to speak about one of our proposals that we wrote.
Yeah.
But before we could get to you, somebody called the question.
Right,
That ended the discussion right there and we had to vote.
yeah.
They're gonna try to avoid doing that this year. Because it really frustrated a lot of people.
Yeah, sometimes you can address it in the standing rules to allow for a certain amount of speakers prior to the question being called, but sometimes you can't, so. The one tricky part that does come into play there that we just be mindful of, Larry is our elected representative there, but if we have somebody else that then takes voting credentials, they would have to know that they're still speaking on behalf of the board in that case. Those other items, it was pretty easy for me to speak positively to, because we had also voted on those items too. So I knew I was speaking on behalf of the school board in that capacity because we had to approve those items prior to those proposals. So, but yeah, there's some nuance in those details if somebody else wanted to speak up, but I think pretty clear on what kind of our priorities and the effects of SQUIM are. So, okay. With that, I believe that is our last item, right? So, anything else? Go to the order. Well, not the earliest we've adjourned the meeting by any means, but we'll
It's a
go ahead.
competition.
Good discussion. It was a good discussion.
Now,
Well,
we were debating whether it was Eric or Marin's absence that shortened the meeting. So
Yeah, the people.
yak, yak.
Usually need to be gone for that to happen, to be you
We
and
couldn't
me,
come up
Larry,
with-
come on.
we couldn't come up with a decision.
Tell us more about that. I think there's some irony here happening.
From my
But-
years of experience.
On that note, we will